Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Friday, July 26th, 2019, and I'm back. I've been gone for the past week and a half, and I will be back uploading regular videos, and I haven't really missed much. There is some data that I do want to go over and pretty much just talk about it because the upcoming Democratic debates, I believe they are in 4 days from today. I will most likely be live streaming both. I may be somewhere one evening during one Democratic debate, but I will definitely try to live stream both of them. They do have an interesting lineup that I will cover in a video tomorrow, but today we will be talking about the latest Democratic primary polling data and some interesting general election polling data. I don't think that it's going to be too important in terms of general election data as of right now, but I would say that this Democratic nomination polling data shows some interesting trends, maybe a decline for some candidates and up for some other candidates. Pretty much just how we see the polls fluctuate generally, but some of this is a little bit unexpected per se. So the first poll that I want to go through, we're actually going to go a little bit back. So we have a lot of new data from Sunday, July 21, from Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, California, and Texas. Now, I understand why they have South Carolina, New Hampshire, and Iowa data. Those are the three earliest primaries and caucuses without Nevada. But California and Texas, I can understand that these are two very big states, but they're not necessarily as close as the other ones. Not necessarily a year away, but around a year away for California and Texas. I actually think California might have moved up based off Jerry Brown's law. But looking at this Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina data, this is going to be very important for all of the candidates. This is going to set the tone of the race. By the time we reach California, by the time we reach Texas, we already know who are general frontrunners, and a lot of these candidates will have dropped out. So the Iowa Democratic Presidential Caucus, CBS News/YouGov, shows Biden ahead by 5%. At 24% overall. The interesting numbers pretty much go down to the race for second place. Sanders leads the bunch at 19%, Warren at 17%, and Harris at 16%. Now, the interesting thing here is that Buttigieg was in second place in Iowa about a month ago. Right before that Democratic debate, Buttigieg was doing pretty well in the state of Iowa. In fact, if we look here, the USA Today poll had Buttigieg in 6th, but that was right after the debate. But the Des Moines Register/CNN poll wouldn't necessarily actually say that Buttigieg was in second. I guess he was in 4th place, but he was pretty high up there. Essentially, he was doing extremely well amongst, I guess, all the polling data. This is a candidate that was practically a nobody, wasn't even on there, and then went from 1 to 11% pretty much over a couple of weeks, went to 9, peaked at 14, went down to 11, 14, 6, and 7. So I guess he wasn't necessarily in second place, but he definitely was in a really good point. I definitely remember going through a poll that showed him at 15%. I didn't see one there. I definitely remember going through it because it was interesting, but I guess maybe I'm wrong about that. But still, Buttigieg is definitely down from where he was before at 11 or even 14%, down at 7%. Looking at the rest of these candidates, not much to point out. Harris, Sanders, and Warren, though, are in a race for second place right now. Harris is in 4th, Warren is in 3rd, and Sanders is in 9th, 2nd, and Buttigieg is in 5th. And then, of course, we have Biden on top, as I mentioned before. Biden plus 5 overall, which is not too healthy of a lead. I do think that once either Warren or Sanders drops out, or if any of them do before Iowa, we should see an increase, obviously, for some of the other candidates. But as of right now, I think Iowa is a very interesting case. New Hampshire and South Carolina pretty much show Biden ahead. New Hampshire is closer to Iowa's lead number. But I think it's interesting that Biden actually leads in New Hampshire. Before Sanders actually had a pretty strong hold on New Hampshire. Starting off with the first poll ever taken, Sanders led by 7. Sanders led by 12 and 4 and 2 during a round, I guess, by UNH and then St. Anselm. But looking back a couple of months, generally Biden actually still led. He was Biden plus 13, plus 18, definitely down to a smaller margin. But I think that in a state that Bernie Sanders did phenomenal in back in 2016 against the only other candidate running, Hillary Clinton, it was just interesting that Biden is somehow ahead of Sanders here. Sanders is in 2nd, Warren is in 3rd, Harris is in 4th. Sound familiar? Going over to South Carolina, Biden has a strong lead. This is highly expected. Biden has around 50% of the black vote amongst, all Democratic primary voters. South Carolina has a very heavy African-American population, so this is definitely expected. Hillary Clinton dominated here. But Biden leads by 22. Sanders is in second. Warren and Harris tie for third, and the rest of the candidates are under 10%. Now, California and Texas are very large states, but they definitely need a lot of attention. California is interesting. Biden leads by 1. I would expect Harris to have a really strong lead, considering that this is her home state. She is in second place. Warren is in third, and Sanders is in fourth. But Biden at 24% to her 23% is pretty surprising to me. I did not expect Biden to beat the own senator from her own state. Senator Dianne Feinstein has actually endorsed Joe Biden over Kamala Harris, which I think is pretty interesting, considering that they're both senators from California, yet one chose Biden and one chose Harris, obviously herself being Harris. And Texas has some interesting results. O'Rourke is up there in second place, and Warren is in third. Sanders is in fourth, and Harris ties with Sanders for fourth. But O'Rourke definitely makes sense that he's in second place there, but I did not expect Biden to have that large of a lead again in O'Rourke's home place. And the fact that Castro, his home state is Texas, is in 4%, that's also pretty interesting to me there. But moving across away from these President Trump job approval polls, looking at the Political Morning Consult polls, we have Biden ahead by 15% nationwide. Sanders is in second, Warren is in third, Harris is in fourth. Again, pretty familiar in terms of what we're looking at. The rest of the candidates are below 10%. Yang is actually getting 2%. I wouldn't say that's necessarily a bump or I guess a huge change from where he was before. I just think that it is pretty interesting when we go up to the poll at the top from Fox News. So Biden leads by 15%. That's obviously a really strong lead. Harris is back down in fourth place compared to second right after the Democratic debates. And she's pretty much a little bit behind Warren. Warren and Harris definitely are going to have to fight it out for third place. But as of right now, Warren is taking it. Looking at, I guess, another Economist YouGov poll, Biden leads by 7% nationwide. Warren, surprisingly, is in second place here. Sanders is in third, and Harris is in ninth. I don't know why I said ninth. I think it's just because she had a 9 there. In fourth with 9%, under that 10% mark, which is pretty interesting. Right now, Biden leads by 7%, so that's his smallest margin of victory amongst all of these polls, which I think is pretty interesting. Again, Yang is at 2. Tom Steyer, recently announced, is at 1%, along with Klobuchar, barely behind Gabbard, Castro, O'Rourke, Booker, and Yang. So I think that is also pretty interesting. So we have more data from South Carolina, the Monmouth poll, and an Ohio Democratic primary data, which is pretty interesting. We'll talk about that one separately. I want to mention that you need 15% or more to get any delegates from South Carolina in the Democratic primary. None of these candidates, besides Joe Biden, are above 15% there. I'm not so sure about over here. Sanders is at 17%, but looking at this most recent poll from Monmouth, Biden is at 39%, and the rest of these candidates, if this was the primary, presidential primary results, none of them would get any delegates. That's pretty crazy. Biden is ahead by 27%. That makes sense considering he's pretty popular, tied very closely to Hillary Clinton and the Obama administration, which could definitely help in the Democratic primary. But I think we're seeing some interesting results here. Harris is in second now in this poll. Sanders is in third. Warren is in fourth. Now, Ohio has some general election data, Trump versus Biden, and Trump versus Warren, Sanders, Harris, Buttigieg, and Booker. Interestingly, Trump beats Sanders, Trump beats Warren, Trump beats Booker, ties with Harris, ties with Buttigieg, but Biden crushes Trump. You know, this is something that I've seen time and time again, and this is an argument that a lot of Biden supporters are going to make, and I guess based off the data, is true that Biden is the most electable candidate, and that's the same argument that was used for Hillary Clinton back in 2016, but at the same time, it's the argument that almost won her the nomination. And when I say almost, I mean not that she lost the nomination, but that a number of other factors definitely helped her with the nomination, but that was definitely the forefront of her campaign. Biden leading Trump by 8%, that's pretty interesting. That's just pretty crazy to me that Warren loses to Trump, Sanders loses to Trump, Harris ties, Buttigieg ties, Booker loses, but Biden leads by 8, making Ohio theoretically a likely state. The Democratic primary polling data also shows Biden ahead by 17%, a pretty strong lead for an area that supposedly doesn't like centrist Democrats. Sanders ties with Harris for second, Warren is in third or fourth, whichever characterization you want to give her based off that. And Biden leads by 17%. I think that is pretty interesting. So the last thing we go over is this Fox News poll from the general election nationwide and the Democratic primary. Let's talk about the general election real quick. Trump beats Warren. Trump beats Harris, but loses to Sanders by 6 and loses to Biden by 10. Trump had the most amount of votes amongst Elizabeth Warren and the least amounts Joseph Biden. And I think that is pretty interesting. Again, the electability argument is definitely going to be used this time around. And this 2020 Democratic presidential nomination poll shows Biden ahead by 18%, Sanders in second, Warren in third, Harris in fourth. Something that we've seen very, general amongst all of this polling data, and actually on the general trend, Harris was in second place and has since knocked down, breaking away from Sanders and Warren down to fourth place. Sanders and Warren are very, very close for second, and Biden is has doubled the amount of support as Bernie Sanders at this point in time. So I would say that this is a down, a downtime. It's not looking good for a number of these candidates that aren't Joe Biden. A number of them aren't even getting their name out there. Biden definitely has a pretty strong lead nationwide, and he's pretty much rebounding from where he was before the polls. Before the debates. But we have 2 more debates coming up, so make sure you go ahead and watch my live streams for those. I will most likely be covering them. They were very, very fun covering last time, so I think that you guys would also enjoy it this time around. But yeah, so Biden leads by 18%. I think that is very interesting starting off. I think this will probably be the last or second to last poll that we'll see before the upcoming debates, which will be held on CNN at 9 p.m. I believe Eastern time. But yeah, so thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.